Hi, I'm Denise Gorse from Loyola Press, joined by Father Joseph Tetlow for an Ignatian conversation. Father Tetlow has spent his life sharing the message of Ignatian spirituality. His books include Considering Jesus, Choosing Christ in the World, and Always Discerning. Welcome, Father Joe.
Thank you, Denise. I'm glad to be here.
So today I want to talk specifically about Considering Jesus. And you write in that book, anyone who claims to abide in him ought to live as he lived. I saw this as a recurring theme in that book. Would you please tell us some more?
Well, in the first place, let's remember that I didn't make that up.
Right.
I didn't. That's right out of the first letter of John. I think it's chapter 4, right out of anyone who claims to abide in him must live as he lived. Well, I think maybe, first of all, it would be useful to remember that John himself, or the author of that letter, John himself, did not make that up. Because Jesus himself said, I have given you an example that as I have done, so you also ought to do. So the command to live as Jesus lived is not from his disciples, it is from Jesus himself, telling all of his followers that he's given them an example, a model. And that's what the Gospel of John insists on. From in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and everything came to be. He was the model. In a way, we have to imagine that before anything existed, God our Lord already foresaw the human form of the Redeemer and created everything in order to evolve. So why are we told to be like Jesus? Because he is the image of the unseen God, and he gives us the model. So that's why we have to really learn how Jesus, what was his human experience? What was it? Well, to understand experience, I think we need to be aware of two things. One is a way of praying, and the other is a way of understanding experience. How do we understand experience? We tell stories. Well, that helps a lot. It does. That's the way the Gospels were written. But when we look at an experience now, we know that there is a way of understanding experience a little bit more sophisticated than grunts. So language, we can get along with language by saying, we can do that. We can use words and grammar. The same thing with experience. We can understand experience as what happened. Oh, what happened? Or we can look at it and say, well, who was that? What made them do that? What were they thinking when they did? In other words, how do we understand experience as a grammar of experience? That's really the point that I make in my book. This is not a philosophy. It hasn't reached that yet. It's not a psychology. I'm not talking psychology here. How do we understand experience? My interpretation is that we have to look at the context in which the experience happened. You cannot be away from the context. And the more you know about the context, the better you can appreciate the experience. The second thing is, what is the condition of the one who's experienced? What was Jesus's thoughts like? What was he, when he first saw the temple, what was the awe or the dread or the fear or the delight that filled his spirit? What was it? Well, we can say something about that. The third thing is, what of his perspectives? Well, how was he looking at this? How did he look at things? How did he understand the Samaritans? The fourth thing is his own perception, what he actually appreciated when he saw it, what he grasped of what went on. And the fifth is what he wanted to do. I wanted to be about my Father's business. And the last is that when a human person acts, we're not like a computer, which does what it's told to do. At least mine always does, and I'm usually wrong. Anyhow, it does what, like anything, a machine does what it's told to do. We don't. We put into action what we are in our context, what we are in our hearts, what we perceive, what we desire, what we really hope for, and what we want. That's an enactment, and that's how Jesus, that's how we have to understand how Jesus lived. So if we want to abide in him, we have to have the mind that he had, the mind of Christ, that God is always creating me. And now that Jesus Christ is always redeeming me. And now that I steadily want to find God in all things. Of course, why? Because that's where God is. You know, when I pray to get to the top of the mountain, when I get there, God's already there. He's been waiting for me. When I pray to have a good attitude, God's in that good attitude waiting for me. And then what I desire, I want only according to uprightness in my desires. And I want to do what is holy the way Jesus did it. So that's why we have to enact what God gives us in grace in order to be abiding in Jesus. Does that make sense, Denise?
That does, and that gives us so much to think about, Father Joe. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and more information about this idea. And thank you to our viewers for joining us. Visit us at ignatianspirituality.com for more Ignatian inspiration. Peace.
Thank you, Denise.